Can living a healthy life help us live a free life? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show.
Well, happy Monday there, folks. Brian Nichols here on the Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you live from our Stratus IP studios here in lovely, lovely Eastern Indiana. Don't let cyber attacks or outdated business technology put your company at risk. Learn more at briannicholsshow.com/Stratus IP. All right, rewind over, almost 20 years ago at this point, and you go back to yours truly. I was a big boy. How big was I? Well, to my heaviest, when I got into my very late teens, around like 385 pounds. And I found that not only was I very unhealthy, but I was miserable because I was being trapped in a prison cell. That prison cell was my own body. I realized I had lost my own personal autonomy, and I had lost the ability to live my life freely. And with that, I decided no more. Never again will I find myself stuck in a position where I was quite literally trapped within the confines of the own walls that were my body and my inability to do things that I wanted to do. So I thought it was important for us today to talk about the importance of not just talking about living by our principles, but how do we actually go ahead and start off if we're having trouble getting things enacted. Joining us today from In Liberty and in Health, Kyle Matovcik. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing, my friend?
Excellent, Brian. Thank you so much for having me on, and it's great to see you again.
Good to see you too. You say again, yes, folks are like, yeah, I thought this guy's name sounds familiar. I just joined you on your awesome show there in Liberty and Health. We talked about living by our principles, which this kind of sparked the conversation for today, which I thought, hey, we should be talking about not just living by our principles, but let's just look at a lot of folks out there who they've identified. Yes, there is a problem. I need help. But how do I get things started? You have your own personal story of fitness and your journey there we're going to talk about today. But first, Kyle, before we dig into things, let's start things off by giving yourself a chance to introduce who you are to the audience and your pathway to talking about health and fitness in the world of liberty.
For sure. So my name is Kyle Matovcik, as you had laid out there beautifully, much better than I could. I am a libertarian. I'm a musician, if you can't see by the guitars behind me, and I'm also an athlete and huge exercise enthusiast. And as you said, I host the In Liberty and Health podcast. And my idea for this podcast was to kind of lay out how I feel personally that health and liberty are intrinsically tied to one another, and how trying to maximize your health will also maximize the amount of liberty that you have, because what is all the freedom in the world that you could possibly have if you can't be alive long enough or aren't autonomous enough to enjoy it. So that's kind of what sparked my interest into getting into this realm as well. And I was at one point, much like you, a much bigger individual. I was 250 pounds. I'm about 6 feet tall, and that's about 70 pounds heavier than where I am right now. And I had tried this wacky carnivore diet, and not that I recommend this to people, but I had lost a lot of weight through that. And then really it wasn't necessarily the carnivore diet that had helped me lose that weight. It was understanding the behaviors and modifying my diet and lifestyle to achieve a leaner and much healthier being that I now enjoy and experience today.
Really quick, Kyle, and I want to put this out there. You touched on something, the carnivore diet. We see this happen a lot. Now, I'm not crapping on the carnivore diet or any particular diet in that matter. I'm a big fan of the ketogenic diet, but folks need to understand this. And I think this is across the board. There is no magic pill. There is no magic diet. There is no magic wand. What requires, and you hit the nail on the head here, it's changes in your life, right? It's healthy habits that you start to implement throughout the day. It's fundamental changes that you're going to take and create throughout your life in your daily habits that are going to help you on this path towards not just change, but then truly making your life better. And I think that's the part a lot of folks, they forget or they don't want to acknowledge. And I got this when I lost all my weight, man. And it drove me crazy, is that the first thing folks asked wasn't, like, oh, what was the hardest part? Or like, oh man, what do you like? Is there anything you wish you could have done differently? It was always like, wow, what was your, like, what surgery did you use? Or like, what medication did you take? And I'm just like, why is that the question? And I realize it's because they want to be able to do it too, they want the shortcuts. They want to be easy, but man, I don't know. Part of the reward was the challenge of seeing that I was able to do this. Now, it took 2 years, right? That's not a magic pill by any stretch of the imagination. There is no magic wand there for a 2-year period of my life where I was literally at the gym, out, walking the roads at like 3 a.m, trying to just do something to get myself going. So let's start off there. Talk about how one can actually start looking at implementing healthy habits. I mean, what are some things you found successful in helping get healthy habits incorporated into your life? And then how do you think other folks might be able to find ways to get healthy habits incorporated into theirs?
Well, this is a pretty broad topic for me. Honestly, I do feel like having a circadian rhythm, a good circadian rhythm for you is going to be something that's very, very helpful in this. So for me personally, I usually go to bed anywhere from about 7:45 to like 9 o'clock at night and get up every morning from about 4 to 4:30. That's consistent even on weekends. Even if I'm out playing with my band till 11 o'clock at night, I still generally get up around the same time. And that's not to say I don't take a nap later on in the day, because that can be a little bit exhausting. But the circadian rhythm, for one, trying to target protein in your diet is very, very important, because we know that protein is the most satiating macronutrient. And that's not to say that you just eat macros per se, but when it comes to specific foods, the foods that have higher protein content tend to be more satiating. Walking after meals is great to help regulate blood sugar and appetite, because the blood sugar spikes can, in some people, make them feel hungry. Also, getting some more fiber in is a great way, and there have been meta-analysis done that correlated your overall fiber intake with your overall longevity, and once again, that's going to help with satiation as well. And then just also not being too hard on yourself when you fall off the wagon necessarily. So when I did the carnivore diet, one thing that I noticed is that I'd be good for a week or two, and then I'd just have this all-out binge, right? I would be eating everything you could possibly put in front of me, and I would feel absolutely horrible about it. And then the worst part was that all the progress I made that week was offset by this one day. So I try not to say this too much, because a lot of people kind of get triggered by this term, but calories in, calories out still matters at the end of the day. And if you're having a good week where you eat 1,800 to 2,000 calories all throughout the week, but then on the weekend you have a cheat of 7,000 calories, well, guess what? You still netted some energy by the end of that week. So don't be too hard on yourself. Try to walk a little bit more, try to increase protein, increase fiber, and those will kind of get you right in the ballpark. And then obviously the exercise routine will help as well. And we can get into that more if you would like.
Yeah, well, and we just hit the nice kind of framework here of the two different components that are important. You touched on the physical component, and this is the part that so many folks neglect to even address, and that is the diet, right? The nutrition. What are you putting in your body? What's the fuel that you're trying to use to drive the car? So let's talk about the fuel part first, because I think that might be the most important thing, because it is often the most forgotten thing. The fitness part, it's like, yep, that makes sense. Get up, move more, do more stuff, pick more things up, put more things down, get out and walk. Whatever you have to do, just do something. But the diet part, it's constant, right? And I say this, I still struggle with this, where I'll see that commercial and it will just trigger whatever, trigger in my brain goes back to when I was 4 years old getting the Happy Meal. And that was like, the dopamine trigger for me. So like, how do you recommend folks start addressing dealing with diet? Do you recommend small changes first and incrementally change things long term, or the cold turkey approach, cut things out entirely and then slowly start to incorporate things back in, see if certain things bother you, but then start to get more of a structured regimen in place? What are your thoughts?
So the nice part about this, and I actually just did a podcast on this, I believe, a week or two ago, according to pretty much every single study you find that's correctly done, you're going to see that all diets perform about the same over the course of about 6 months to a year. So that being said, what diet works for you is going to be the diet that's the best for you. And the best part is that you can kind of decide what you want to do. If you like a ketogenic diet, you can do a ketogenic diet. If you like a low-fat diet, you can do a low-fat diet. I don't recommend the carnivore diet, but that can work too. Personally, for me, what I found is that kind of a more flexible approach. So what some people may call, if it fits your macros, or flexible dieting, works best for me personally. And for some people, they may need a little bit more rigid rules. But if I were to give somebody a prescription, I would say, hey, let's try and just make these small changes initially. So why don't we just try to have, a serving of protein 3 times a day with a little bit of fiber, and preferably those protein sources coming from animal foods, because those are the most bioavailable to our bodies, and I find them to be just the most enjoyable as well. When it comes to the sugars and oils and stuff like that, let's try to remove as many added sugars as possible. Instead of going for fully sugared up barbecue sauces, let's go for sugar-free stuff. Instead of going to regular syrups, let's go to sugar-free syrups. Instead of full fat yogurt, let's go to fat-free yogurt. Try not to use oils on your food or anything like that. A lot of people talk about seed oils, but honestly, by a lot of the data that I've seen, they're actually pretty benign. I think the harm in seed oils comes from the added calories without any added satiation. And the same deal goes for sugars. So for me personally, I would just say try to make better decisions in your food choices. When you look at a label, try to see if protein is the highest thing. And that's not to say you should be, orthorexic about it, but just try to target protein more than anything else. And if you do fail on your diet, if you do have something that's kind of off the plan, don't be scared. Everything's going to be okay. You're 1 meal off and you're 1 meal back on.
Yep. And I think it's important to read the ingredients, right? You started talking about that. And this has been something, I don't really make New Year's resolutions. I just think, try to do something better each day. Like don't wait until January 1st to decide you want to better yourself. Like start doing stuff whenever you can. And one thing that I started doing, I didn't realize I was doing it more end of last year, was reading the ingredients, trying to see like, okay, is there stuff in here that's real? Like, is it stuff I can pronounce? If it's not, at least look it up. See, why is this in here? Oh, this is a preservative. Okay, well, what are they trying to preserve? Why, how much of this is in here? And then you start to question things there. It's like, okay, you know what? Maybe I don't need all this extra stuff that's in here. I'll go buy the more, I would say the fresh stuff, right? The stuff that your body needs, the good fuel. And I guess this goes into another debate we see, and that you were touching on it: carnivore, ketogenic, vegetarian, vegan. Is there one way or another, or is it important for folks to listen to their body? I kind of think the answer is the second one. That's my opinion, but do you have a preference one way or another?
So personally for me, my bias is more towards a low carb diet, although I've done podcasts basically going against low carb just because I want to be intellectually honest with people. But as I alluded to earlier, there have been plenty of meta-analysis done where if they look at people's weight loss and compliance from 6 months to a year, all people, when calories are equated, do about the same, and all diets work about the same. So I'm sure everybody's heard the statistic that I think it's 97% of diets fail, as in people who lose all the weight gain it all back within 3 years. So I'm kind of lucky I made it past the 3-year mark, and I believe I'm going to maintain my weight loss, or at least I don't see me going back to 250 pounds. At least I really hope not. But that being said, just find the diet that works best for you. Find the foods that you like, and do your best to not overconsume. Now, once again, there are some things that you should maybe watch out for, like when you see added sugars or when you see a high saturated fat content in some people, that may elevate their cholesterol, which may lead to a heart attack. Now, once again, there's plenty of other things to look at before you look at that, but just try to get in more fibrous foods, right? Because it was going to help with satiation. Try to limit alcohol consumption. Now, obviously, I'm not a zero alcohol person. I love, my old fashioned. I love, margaritas with my wife. I love all that stuff. Just try not to go for the fattiest cuts of meat. Instead, maybe go for like a sirloin. And then occasionally, you can have your fatty brisket or ribeye. But just more often than not, maybe try to opt in for the sirloin steak, the filet, something a little bit leaner, just so that way you get a little bit more protein versus, just lots of fat with that as well.
Now we can go on to the exercise part. And this, again, I think this can be just as much of a debate, even though it shouldn't be, of the food side of things, the actual nutrition, and what's the most effective way to lose weight or to gain muscle. And that really goes into what your goals are, right? And I think this is partly what people forget, is that this is much like anything else in life. It's a system, it's a formula. It's got things that work together, and different things that you will do and different equations you put together will yield different outcomes. So with that being said, when you look at the fitness side of things, the exercise side of things is entirely contingent on your goals. But let's go back to that person who they've been on the couch their entire life, or they've been sitting in the video game chair, just gaming nonstop. They haven't taken a step out of that chair in years. They just got the Cheeto stains on their fingers and the Mountain Dew stain on their teeth. So how do we get them going from there to taking that first step literally?
So for those kind of people, I would honestly just say, let's just start walking. But then let's say this person's comfortable enough with walking for maybe 5-10 minutes, and they're saying, hey, I'm ready to start picking some stuff up and putting it down again. I actually started my wife on this program, and I have the little sheet right here. But basically, you'd want to let's do like a full body workout 2 days a week, because when you're still new to weightlifting, the stimulus is going to be so strong because it's a novel stimulus that you're going to grow basically just looking at weights. So that being said, once you start to work out, you're going to be very, very sore. So you may only be able to tolerate working out 2 days a week. So let's do a full body workout where you hit everything. You want to get your trap bar deadlift in, which is basically just, picking something up off the ground. You want to squat, you want something pulling towards you to work your back muscles and your biceps, something pushing away from you to work your chest and triceps, some kind of push overhead to work your shoulders and a little bit of your traps, and, do some calf raises and some other hamstring work. Just something to kind of hit your whole body. Don't go crazy. You want to maybe do like 3 to 4 sets per exercise. And then, maybe try to get some cardio at a different time during the day, maybe in the morning, and then hit your workout in the afternoon. And then once you kind of feel pretty good at that, you're no longer getting sore, then we could start doing maybe 3 days a week, 4 days. And then for some people, maybe even 6 days. There's, basically the world is your oyster. The gym is your oyster.
What about supplements? I hear this all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Folks are trying to debate what's the best supplements. Creatine. Do I take creatine? Protein powder, whey protein, whey isolate, casein. What should I take there? So let's talk about that from a supplementation standpoint. Do you take supplements? What do you recommend on your end?
I'm pretty lame in this regard. So I've experimented with a lot of stuff, but I would recommend like maybe a multivitamin and vitamin D, just because if you're up north, like I am in southwestern Pennsylvania, it gets pretty dark and you may not see the sun for a little bit. So vitamin D, as we know, has been correlated with, all sorts of better health outcomes in regards to pretty much everything in our lives. So a multivitamin will kind of just hit your minimums. And that's not to say that it's a cure-all. You should still be trying to get as many nutrients as you can through whole foods. But a multivitamin will help you just kind of hit those bare minimums. Vitamin D, because, everybody's deficient in vitamin D. And then if you want to start going above and beyond, creatine monohydrate is great. And there's just plenty of research on it to suggest that it's a very, very safe supplement and does help you build muscle. Beta alanine for some, because it's going to help buffer lactic acid. So when you start doing exercises longer than about a minute, or around a minute, if I remember correctly, then you're going to be able to go a little bit harder for a little bit longer. So that one's pretty good. L-citrulline to help maybe get a little bit better of a pump when you work out. Caffeine's great as well. Pretty much any kind of protein is great as well. Some of the wheys may be good. And then if you don't digest those well, then there's like different animal proteins. Like I know Redcon 1 in particular makes like an animal blend. The vegan proteins are good. And then there's actually what's called potato isolate protein, which actually is high in leucine, which most veggie proteins are deficient in leucine. That's why vegans have to eat more protein versus people who are omnivorous, because a lot of vegetables are deficient in that amino acid leucine, which is responsible for muscle protein synthesis. You have to get around the 3 gram mark. And most vegetarian sources of protein just don't have that much leucine in them.
Kyle, what's one thing? Could be one thing, could be multiple things, but let's try to narrow it down to at least one, maybe 2 things that you wish you knew when you had started out your entire fitness journey that you didn't know, that would have just made your life so much better, would have made all the difference, and would have made you feel like you weren't bashing your head against the wall.
I wish I would have been told that a lot of the fad diets and sensational claims that you hear out there are just kind of that they're fad diets, and the sensational claims usually aren't backed up by any hard data and are usually BS. Because that would have saved me 2 years of my life of restricting, binging, and getting to a much better place mentally and physically while still enjoying foods and not feeling like an absolute failure every single time I fell off the diet. That, and also that you can hit more than one muscle group in a day, and sometimes more than one time in a week, and get much, much better results because you're spreading out the volume of overall stimulus to your muscles throughout the week. So just kind of those 2 things are 2 things that kind of immediately came to mind. And I'm sure if you let me biddle on it for a day or 2, then I could probably come up with 100 other things.
Oh, no, for sure. Well, hey, how about this? I know we're already getting hard pressed for time, so let's go towards final thoughts. And I guess as my final thoughts, I'll kick things off here. It's that this isn't overnight, but it also it's never done. And I think that's one thing for I wish I knew, was that it's never done. Like, I lost 180 pounds of fat, and I, in my mind, was like, oh, I did it. But I didn't realize that there was more to it. And then I had to start finding things to keep me wanting to go forward. So then I got into running, and then I loved running for a while, and I was running 5Ks all the time, believe it or not. And then I decided after that, and then my knees started to give out and said, no more. I said, okay, let's do some weightlifting. I got so into weightlifting, and now here I am. I'm 6'5", 269 pounds. I love lifting. I'm there. I'm like you, about 4 a.m. every day at the gym, lifting at least 4 to 5 days a week, getting some cardio in as well. And this is the best I have felt probably ever across the board. And that's thinking back to, I have a lot more aches and pains now than I did back when I was younger. And that's a lot of injuries as I've gotten older. But I definitely feel overall that I'm better off in total health, right? And I also would factor in my mental health as well. And I think that's one area that we in the fitness world, we don't work out our mind enough. And that's not talking about reading books and trying to educate yourself, because I think a lot of actual fitness folks are very smart. But in terms of taking care of the mental health, not trying to compare yourself to somebody else, because your chapter 2, chapter 3 is not the guy next to you's chapter 2, chapter 3. He might be on chapter 36, right? So understand that where you're at is not where other people are at, but also vice versa. There's somebody else who's looking at you. They're on chapter 1, and they're like, wow, I want to be on chapter 3, right? And you have to understand that you are also out there likely serving as a beacon for somebody who's trying to make a better example in their life. So I say all that. My final thoughts is to go out, I guess, in the Jordan Peterson, clean your own room, but also make yourself healthy. It's going to be better for yourself in the long run. You're going to feel better. I speak from experience. Kyle, you will speak from experience. And this is interesting, right? We just did an entire episode where we really didn't talk about the liberty movement whatsoever. And I think it's because you look at this it's completely transcendent of politics. This is how we as individuals will thrive, not as Republicans, as Democrats, as libertarians, but as people, right? We want a prosperous, successful people, and it starts with us being a prosperous, successful individual. And the only way you can do that is if you are physically able to heed the call when the time comes. So that's my final thoughts. Kyle, what do you have for us?
I really, really like the way you laid that out about never being done, because there is something very, very encouraging about that, at least to me. A lot of people see people hopped up on steroids, and what they don't realize is that those people still work very, very hard, and that even without those steroids, as big as they are, they would still have to, they probably would be still pretty big without those. So that being said, why not see the best you can do? Like, all the guitars right here, all the weights, everything that I do, I'm always thinking, this is just putting my reps in, right? I'll never be done. This is who I am. This is part of me. Everything that I'm doing is part of me and who I'm going to become. So I'm going to give it every last little thing that I got. And it's just reps. This is just hammering the iron, right? This is striking the iron while it's hot and trying to build yourself into the most robust, healthy, and best individual that you can be. And to almost sound a little selfish, I don't believe that you can really help people maximally until you fully help yourself. So resistance training for me is something that I have to do to make sure that I'm on top of it at all times. I can't help my wife. I can't help the people I work with. I can't help the customers' vehicles that I'm working on if I'm not fully helping myself by doing that every single day, by going for a walk on the treadmill, or taking my dogs for a walk, or lifting heavy weights when I go to the gym, or even going out and playing music like I do. I cannot help other people until I help myself. And by helping myself, that is lifting weights and sticking to a consistent workout routine, and also enjoying life. Once again, maybe deviating from the diet a little bit, or just factoring in a piece of cheesecake like I did this past Friday to enjoy at the Cheesecake Factory with my wife. And we sit down and have a cocktail, and we have a great dinner. It's a beautiful time. And, we go home, a little bit fat and happy, and that's perfectly okay too.
And really quick, I don't mean to interrupt. I gotta give a shout out as well, because I too partook in some cheesecake. Because our girl Jen Jacobson from Beloved Cheesecake, so she was just on the show last Monday.
Nice.
And she was talking about how she was one of the few business owners across America who was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm not dealing with all this nonsense with the government's passing down and telling me I'm not essential. So her bakery, which had just started there at the beginning of COVID, they fought back, and she has some gluten-free cheesecakes now. To your point, right? I don't usually get to have that kind of stuff, and I have celiac disease. So does
my wife.
There you go. So here you go. Jen sends them in the mail. I cannot recommend Beloved cheesecakes enough. I had a peppermint cheesecake, phenomenal. They have to use a walnut crust for it. So I'm going to be making sure my 5-star Google review will be landing there shortly. But if you're looking for a cheesecake in the future, that's one to get.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely have to try it. Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing that you touched on there real quick that I also wanted to elaborate on, always leave local businesses, small businesses, 5-star reviews if you think their service is worth it. That goes so unbelievably far. And there's something beautiful about seeing individuals go out there and put their name on the line for other businesses, because as soon as people type that business in Google, I mean, my old man owns a shop, to see all these 5-star reviews, that means you can trust this person. And, because this is the world that we live in now, is we live online. So when people want to find a service, they're going to look at the reviews. So whatever you can do to help, your fellow leaders in the community become more well-known and more revered amongst their peers, do that. Absolutely.
Kyle, unfortunately, as much as I wish you could keep going and going like the Energizer Bunny, because this is a great conversation. And frankly, this is a conversation that we need to see having more frequently taking place in the Liberty Movement, beyond conversations about who's better, Rothbard or Hop or Hayek, or no, stop it. Like, go get off the couch. Go get off the internet. Go outside. Stop arguing, fatty. Like, we need to stop doing this where we think that as long as we're online having these political arguments that we're making a difference. You make a difference first by changing yourself. So you want to really start trying to see what you can accomplish in life. Go see what you can accomplish in your own physical health first. So that being said, Kyle, please do us a favor. Let folks know where they can go ahead and find you. They want to continue the conversation, but also they want to go ahead and subscribe to your phenomenal podcast. Remind us, what is the name of that show, and where can they go ahead and find it?
Awesome, Brian. Well, one more time, thank you for having me on. You can find me at Kyle Matovcik, KyleMatovcik on Twitter. If you look up In Liberty and Health on Google, on YouTube, Spotify, you name it, you'll find it there. You've been a guest twice, and you're welcome back on anytime. Also look up the band A Common Crown. That's the band that I do backup vocals for and also play guitar in. We're opening for Lita Ford in May. So if any of your listeners are here in Pennsylvania, near the Pittsburgh area, come check us out. And one more time, just thanks for having me on. And you guys can find me Twitter, everywhere else where people are people.
Awesome. We'll make that easy for you folks, by the way, to go ahead and find everything. BrianNicholsShow.com is the main hub for, of course, anything related to guests we've had in the show, sponsors for the show. But specifically, now I know 99% of you are joining us here on the audio version. All you got to do is go to your favorite podcast catcher, click the artwork on your podcast catcher. It'll bring you right over to today's episode, where you can find, those links. You can find social media, but also you can find the entire transcript of today's episode. And you can find the video version of the show, which is over on YouTube, on Odyssey, and on Rumble, wherever it is you get your video content from. All I ask, do me a favor, hit that little subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss a single time we go live. And by the way, yes, you saw the ticker there at the bottom of the screen. We have a brand new free ebook. It is How to Win your local election. It is for anyone who is running for local office. You're thinking about running for local office. What does it entail? We're going to go through how to build your campaign. We're going to talk about fundraising, voter outreach, messaging, and more. Go grab your free copy at briannicholsshow.com/win local. As for me, find me on Twitter, Facebook at bnicholsliberty. And of course, when you're there, please go ahead and share the episode that you enjoyed as today. I think we had a great conversation, how we can help encourage folks to go ahead and live a better life to help promote liberty, yes, in a more healthy manner. So with that being said, that's all we had for you, kicking things off here with a nice way to start the week. With that being said, Kyle, thank you for joining us. And folks, if you got some value from today's episode, well, go ahead and give some value back. You can become an audience insider, $1.99 over at briannicholsshow.com/support. Link in the show notes. But with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Kyle Matovcik. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.